Okay. Okay, week two. Hi, everyone. I hope you had a good week and thank you for the great work on your homework. I want to do two things before we get started. First, um, we have someone in our class who wasn't able to make it to the first class, but I'm just going to have her introduce herself. It's Justine. Do you mind introducing yourself? She is from Bank of America, but I know all of you guys it's a large organization and you may not all know each other.
Yeah, sure. Hey, everybody. My name is Justine Corbett. I work for Bank of America. Um, we had a reorg a few months ago, so my new role is part of our insight strategy team. And I am aligned to a couple different lines of business that I'm helping support, wealth management and our local markets organization, as well as our brand and marketing, and then providing some backup for our complaints and customer experience group. I have worked with Steve in the past, helping support some of the brand initiatives and help building out some of our brand dashboards over the course of the past 6 to 8 months. So I do know Steve, and the other names look pretty familiar. One thing I did want to mention, Debbie, I told you earlier, Jacqueline, I don't think you were around, but I actually used to work for Epsilon, and I supported JLR when I worked for them doing their marketing campaigns.
Such a small world. No, that was before my time, but
yeah, this was in 2012 and 2013. So
yeah, before my time, but
yeah, it was
cool.
a while ago.
It's probably so different now since when you worked on it.
Yeah. So yeah.
Nice, thank you. I also want to introduce Liz. She's up on the top of my screen in green, and Liz is our guest speaker today, and she's going to talk about what kind of research buyer she is, and we'll do that at 7:30. And then the next 25 minutes, or however long it takes up till 7:30, I thought we'd talk about our homework a little bit. And then I want to just spend a little bit of time talking about the videos and what's to come and some things for you guys to think about. Okay, so insights. Thoughts. I think this is one of the hardest assignments. I have to be honest with you because I think it's really easy to find. I mean, first of all, you guys did an amazing job because there's a lot of data. You dug through it, all different approaches. Everybody had a different way to look at it, different observations, different thinking. But getting from the observations and the info to insights is hard, right? Sometimes you have to take a leap because sometimes the data doesn't say exactly what you want to say or what your insight should be, because it's usually much higher level and a little bit more, I want to say, macro and strategic, and kind of contains a lot of different types of things. Like people like to socialize, for example, right? Something we could extract from the data. People like to socialize and be challenged. There was a thought around one-upping. People like to be able to one-up their friends. So what were your thoughts, right? Anything? Comments? I tried to give everybody some comments in there, some feedback, but what were you guys feeling as you were doing it?
I thought that I would be able to the field that was mechanics, which was, I guess, kind of like the techniques that are used in the games. Usually I feel like you would expect something like that to really pop out and be able to give you better insights on, whatever it's related to, because there's a lot of verbiage there. But it's really just user input, right? So you don't really know the reason behind it. So again, you kind of have to make some jumps, and I actually parsed that field out for everything and just did a frequency analysis. But you can't really like deduce anything from that. You know, other than like, this is the number of times we saw this.
Right.
And, you know, some people entered like one word, some people, I think I had as many as like 19 or something. So I kind of thought that was a difficult part of the data and trying to figure out like how to tie it into some insights.
Yeah, I do think this is a tough assignment because you're given a bunch of data with, some feedback from players, right? And you have to figure out what to do with it. And typically, if you were out in, your world of job, right? And you were trying to do an analysis and figure out what makes people tick and what to do. You'd probably have multiple data sources, right? You might have spoken to some consumers, you might have other things, or even things that are happening in the marketplace, general consumer behavior, and it would help you formulate some of these ideas and really kind of elevate what that insight would be. Does that make sense to people? Make sense? I mean, the insight is the heart of our campaign, okay? There wasn't a right or wrong answer for this. Um, a couple of people did actually write out an insight. A lot of people had actions, or even just a statement. I found with almost everyone the insight, there was an insight somewhere in what you had. And I just tried to pull them out. And again, there's no right or wrong for this. But this is about, think about when you are trying, you're sitting down and you're saying, okay, I need to really get myself, work on what the insight or insights are here so I can move forward and develop a campaign or a new product, whatever it happens to be. It's about the why, not the what. The what is there, but understanding the why people do what they do, buy what they buy, invest in what they invest, and what is kind of that underlying motivation and what makes them tick, is really what the insight is. And when you hit the insight, you'll know, like, you can feel it. I mean, I know you guys have not done this a lot of times, or maybe you have, but you'll know, oh, yeah, people like complexity. People are social. People like to be challenged. People do this or whatever it happens to be. Does that make sense to people and to everyone? Okay, so we're not going to be spending more time developing insights. This is, as you know, this class is to give you a taste of everything, that kind of goes into a research plan and developing your research plan to launch communication and then to evaluate it. So this was step one. Step one is, got to get myself good insight, because as we talked about last week, when you have solid insights, not just one advertising campaign can come out of it, many, and it lasts for a very long time because it's true. It's almost a human truth, right? Does that make sense? Everybody clear on that? Okay. So as we go through each of these weeks, I know you've probably, hopefully you've read what the final assignment is. I don't want to get to the end before we finish each piece, but I do find it really useful if you think about what we do each week and the videos you watch and what you read, and think about how we're going to build our research plan, because our job in the final project will be for everyone to build their own research plan to launch the social strategy game, right? And I know last week, I think almost everyone, people have maybe received research plans or something from a supplier, but you've never necessarily built a research plan. Mark touches on it in one of the videos in terms of some of the critical things that do fit into that. What I'm going to do is next week, start to build a research plan in class. So next week, we'll spend half the class talking about qualitative and quantitative, the other half of the class, or some of the class, starting to build a research plan. What does it look like? Where should you start? And so I think that'll be helpful as you guys think about your final project and each step in between. Does that make sense? Okay. Couple other things. Okay, so what was covered in some of the material that you reviewed coming into today was this whole idea of down and dirty analysis. Has anybody been faced with that where, you might typically do a more elaborate, detailed type of an analysis to approach a question or to get answers, and maybe there wasn't funding, maybe there wasn't time, maybe there's internal pressure, whatever it happens to be, and you decided to do something that was a little bit, smaller, quicker, whatever, and the challenges you faced or what you gave up? Anybody? Has anybody done that? Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
I did it for this last assignment.
Talk about it.
So, I knew that the data needed to be cleaned. I knew that the data needed to be parsed, but I kind of let that kind of go off since there are some outliers, but not a tremendous amount of outliers.
Mhm.
So I just kind of stuck with that messy middle and then looked for the things that kind of came out of that. So, I knowingly knew I was throwing away some of the data or some of the things that could narrow it down to focus on kind of a core set to look at it. And we do it a lot too. I mean, I'm a statistician by trade, my undergrad anyways, and then I work in brand and advertising research, but no one wants to hear about, confidence intervals or statistical significance. It's all about directional and trending, and they focus on a numerical change. So a lot of times you either throw out the highest level of significance, while we focus on 95, dial that or widen it a little bit more, or really just talk about the qualitative movements within quantitative data. And so, I mean, that's kind of like, so we use a lot of that down and dirty around it and just use a 360 triangulation approach in order to find that direction.
Got it. That totally makes sense. Others?
Yeah, the readings this week actually really resonated with me. There has been at my company such a shift in focus on performance marketing. So in my position, we have to make a lot of changes and look for optimizations and either wins or losses for having the best experience on the websites. If we could, we would run everything as an A/B test, but we have limited resources for the team that's dedicated to do that. So we have the ability to locally author changes on the website, which we do. And then in order to measure the changes, we do a pre and post analysis. So it's not exactly 100% clean data, or as clean as we would like it. And we lose a lot of the onward journey data points that we're able to look at with the A/B tests. So it does require a lot of assumptions at times, or we'll get data and we'll say, okay, here's the trend. It's kind of not what we were expecting. Why is it happening this way? So yeah, I feel like in my job, we're doing down and dirty research every day.
Makes sense. I can relate. Others?
Yeah, I actually just did sort of it was a pretty simple analysis, but similar to what they were both saying. It was looking at like a pre-post for customer experience for a handful of financial centers that went through some renovations. And, it's like I'm kind of new to the space because of the reorg, but in the data that we're looking at, but it was just a very simple, like, what did customers say once they had an interaction? Did they have a positive or negative experience? Are they likely to recommend that financial center to, family or friends? And, there's a lot of questions that doesn't help answer, just like one simple question, it's like, well, why was it better or worse? Like when you were visiting the financial center, did the renovations, was that what was negative, but did your experience improve, or was it the maybe the employee that you interacted with? So there's like so many unknowns So it was just a very kind of like quick and dirty, like directionally, this is what we're seeing, but we have to make a lot of assumptions about what is going on outside of this,
Mhm.
and just not having an answer to everything.
Yeah, totally. It's kind of like dipping your toe in the water to just get an idea of what's going on.
Mhm.
An- Anybody else?
Oh, well,
Yes, so, okay,
in my area, I do a lot of work with our financial advisors, and my clients are the Merrill corporate people primarily. And a lot of time I get well, let's just talk to the ACTM, which is a group of FAs who are top performers, and they're like an advisory committee. And I have to always say no, because they don't represent the FAs at large. But they still do it on their own. But I constantly have to remind them that they're not a good representation of everyone. They're top performers, they're got big teams, and they don't represent an average FA.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
That's a big watch out too, because I have seen many company use internal people to represent
Yeah.
external consumers, and it can really be misleading.
yes.
So totally. Scott?
I was gonna say, in a lot of the product, the like design work, so I work with a lot of the product management team. So, in early stages of design, there may come up with concepts, and you within that time frame that you're designing the concepts, you may bring in potential customer prospects, but they're really at kind of just a point in time. So you may actually do what's referred to as man on the street, which is just going out and talk to people as they're walking by and asking them about certain elements. You got to be careful because there's a lot of IP concerns about doing that. But sometimes that's the initial, get some feedback, to jumpstart some of the discussions around product design.
Yeah,
But
thank you. Anybody else? Any
Yeah,
other
I think
thoughts?
that Scott said about like product design. We deal with that with packaging design too. Sometimes, well, recently we had some label changes. I work for Ocean Spray, for anybody who doesn't remember. We had some label changes, and before we even had a chance to do an A/B test, like that kind of stuff, they just put it on the shelf and said, "All right, let's figure out what the effect is." So it happens quite a bit in CPG. So a lot of down and dirty research.
Yeah, I could imagine. Yeah. That was very helpful. Thank you. Anybody have any last things to add?
Yeah, I actually spend a lot of my time convincing people to not do the quick and dirty, right? So I've done it pretty successfully so far. For instance, the most recent one is I'm working on some work right now about like independent workers and gig workers. And the question that came to us was, oh, well, we're the product team. We want to do product specific research. Hi, Scott. And first we had to take a step back and be like, okay, well, like, who are we talking about first? Why are we going to launch into product testing and idea testing when we wouldn't even know the audience, the people that are getting into this type of work at all? So it was kind of working with the business a little bit and be like, okay, first let's take a couple steps back. Let's understand who we're talking about. Let's set up some qualitative work. Let's set up some quantitative work. Let's talk to some experts before you spend all this money and dive into what kind of product can we package together and give these people. Who are these people, quote unquote? So yeah, it's fighting a lot, that kind of quick and dirty.
Yeah, I could totally understand that. And the thing about quick and dirty and when we think down and dirty, quick and dirty, I mean, we just need to be cautious about how it's going to be used and what questions we want to answer, and also the life that it may take on after we do it, right? Because it may be one of those things where you do it and you say, oh, we all agree we're going to talk to two people, get just a perspective, right? Man on the street, as we were just talking about. But then, it takes on a life of its own, and someone thinks it's quantitative data. Seen that happen. And it gets a little scary. So just understanding and setting expectations is really important for all of that. So thank you. So before we turn it over to Liz, I want to just understand a couple things. So the next assignment is going to be qualitative and quantitative. And that's how we're going to spend our time next week. And the assignment that you'll have coming out of next week's class is to actually build a qualitative or quantitative plan based on how you decide to approach the questions at hand. Okay. So, can you guys just give me a feel for how many people have done qualitative before?
Me,
Okay, great. Okay, so you guys are you're familiar with it, and doing qualitative could have been hiring a moderator. That's all right, running it yourself. But this is about understanding why and where you would use qualitative. So you guys, it seems like about 5 of you are kind of comfortable, right, with that? What about quantitative? Everybody pretty comfortable with where you would use a quantitative approach? Don't worry, you're not going to have to write like if you do choose quantitative for your homework next week, you'll have to write a survey or just like some perspective on a survey. But okay, so that's very helpful. So when we talk next week, you'll see that the modules that you'll be watching over the next week, there's a bunch on qual versus quant, what's important for qualitative, how to build a quantitative survey. And then what we'll do next week, as I mentioned, is we're going to spend time talking about qualitative. Where does it fit? When do we use it? How do we approach it? And the same thing with quantitative, because I want to make sure you're well equipped to do the homework so that you can make a decision on what approach to take. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yep.
Okay, good. I know a number of you have reached out to me over the past week. Thank you for anybody who's let me know there are classes you can't attend. And in terms of anything going forward, and a couple people had some questions. That's great. Happy to chat about anything. So just let me know. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Liz.
Thank you. First, I can introduce myself. Debbie and I have worked together for many years in a previous life. Most of my entire career has been in consumer and market insights. I spent 28 years at Unilever, working on global brands, local brands, overseeing a piece of shopping insight and analytics. And I'm now at Danone, the yogurt and plant-based beverage company. So I lead yogurt insights in White Plains, New York. So I'm East Coast right now. And given our past, Debbie asked if I would kind of share a little bit about how I look at agencies and agency partners. So I just have a few slides that I thought I'd talk to you about, and we can go from there. Let's see. Let me go here. Go full screen. Can everyone see my screen?
We can see it, Liz.
It's full screen for you?
No, it's not. We can see the screen, but it's not like in slideshow mode.
Okay, let me just see. I'm a Teams person, not a Zoom person. So let me just see the best way to do that.
Down on the bottom, there's a little thing, do you see the little slide thing?
Black and white and a little silent. No, that's not. See all slides. Sorry, just which little icon is that it? Nope, I don't mean
It looks
that.
like a screen on the bottom. Do you see it? Looks like a movie screen on the bottom that next to the volume thing.
Or a wine glass.
Exactly. Thank you, Scott.
Sorry, I'm not seeing that.
No.
Apologies. Just give me a sec. See. Share chat, annotate. Remote control, more. All right, so you guys see what on my screen, what I'm seeing, anything? Let's see.
There, that's it.
That's
Oh,
it.
there it goes, there it goes. Sorry. Okay, now you can see full screen?
No, for some
no.
reason, it's not doing it for you.
Okay, let's try one more time. If not, I can try to.
Try escaping, putting it in slideshow mode and then reconnecting it, maybe, if that would, I don't know if that'll work.
Okay, wait, I'm gonna try one other thing. Do it this way. I have 2 screens in my house. I might just change it here.
There we go, it worked.
Okay, fine, no
We're
problem.
good.
And do you see, is the view okay? Are you seeing my full screen or are you seeing people in
Yeah.
the way?
No, it's good.
It's good. Okay, great.
Mhm.
So what I thought I'd do to you today is Debbie asked, like, what kind of research buyer am I? I'm gonna just check. I'm just gonna have to change something on my screen. In my view. Okay. What kind of research buyer am I? And just to kind of give you a sense, I really view any research partner, whether it's qualitative or quantitative, as like an extension of my own team. I really feel like over the years, my agency partners have really been my partners for years. You know, sometimes my marketers might change, my R&D people may change, but sometimes my agency partners, I've actually worked on many projects with, and I've learned from them and they've learned from me. And I just find, like, if you can treat them like an extension of your own insights team, then the better off you are. So I tend to be an open book. I feel like if I have, you know, a non-disclosure in place, then I'm gonna explain everything, because I feel like if they truly understand my business problem or my business issue, then I've got a better chance of them delivering a better piece of research, stronger insights, a better story at the end, and they can add more value. So I really value them as, like, sometimes I'll even talk to an agency partner and just use them as a sounding board, and I'll be upfront about it. Like, I don't know if this is going to turn into anything. I was just listening to Debbie when she's talking about you're going to have to do a research plan. Like, I've sometimes called an agency partner and said, you know, hey, I think I've got this issue. You know, what kind of research would you recommend? Or do you think we can do what we did last time? Or what's different about this? And I just want to use them as almost a sparring partner and say, I'm not even sure if I'll even get money to do this yet, or I might wind up doing that down and dirty research. But if we had a wish, what could we do together? And I feel like when I treat people that way, then they're going to want to work on my business again. So it's truly like a partnership, and we're kind of in it together. And I find that once that happens and I've treated people that way, then it seems to, like, open the door for more bigger thinking and visionary work longer term. So, like, I've had situations where I worked with an agency and then they've come back and said, like, you know, my company is trying something out and we'd like to try it with you. Like, do you think you have a brand or a project, and maybe we'll give you a discount, or we'd like to pilot up a new methodology with you and see what you think about it. So we'll, like, attach it to something that you're doing, or let's try to experiment together. And I find that, or I'll even get, like, some of the bigger agencies that we all might be working with, they'll say, you know, I'd like to bring this specialist in because they might even have some thought leadership that they can add to your project. So overall, I feel like once I've kind of built that relationship, there are a lot of benefits down the road. So I feel like if you go all in and you're, whether again, it's qual or quant, and to give you like a very simple example, at Danone, I work on kids yogurt, right? That's one piece. We have the brand Danimals. And an issue came up that was from the past, and I went in some archives. I've only been with Danone a couple years, but I knew the moderator who had done some work a few years ago, and we've just built a relationship these past couple years. And she said, Liz, why don't I just, represent? And since then, I've done some other work in this field with children, and I might be able just to kind of add to it. And she didn't just like offered her time, offered new thinking that she had on a topic that was done years ago. And I'm like, wow, and it wasn't like, didn't come across in a selling way whatsoever, but it's like, I value this partner, especially as a specialist in research with children. And I thought, how great is this that she's now offering more things purely, and I made it clear in my note, this is not going to go anywhere. I don't have any more money, but I just need you as a sounding board. And she just came up kind of offering more. That's kind of, I view it as like purely a partnership, and I think it can lead to great things. I'm really anti like being an order taker with some agencies. Like that's the last thing I want. Any questions or thoughts kind of before I go on? Does that make sense? I know it sounds kind of basic, just treat people as you almost want to be treated, but it can go far. And it's also a small world. So, you notice that like people kind of move around our industry, whether they're on the insight side, an agency side, the media side. And if you plan to have like a long career, it's like, it's great that you can kind of build these relationships over time. Okay. The other part is, we've just got, I feel like, some things that happen in a strong client agency partnership is like, it's really great to kind of just solving these business problems, and everyone just kind of wants to, wake up wanting to do great work, right? Build a better report, build something that's useful, build something that's actionable, something that whoever your maybe internal client is, like applies it to their business. I've always felt like in research, it's nice when you see other people in the company using your work and your slides. And that's just a great feeling. So if you're kind of getting people to kind of the desire to drive that business and solve the problem with you, it's great. As I mentioned, like kind of like challenging one another or just being a good sparring partner is a great sign of like a strong relationship, and full on trust. It's like, okay, I'm going to give you a good brief. Sometimes I might do it verbally. Sometimes I might put it in writing, but like if the more I'm going to tell you about my business issue and kind of what are my key questions that I'm trying to solve for, I feel like the more likely I am to get great data, better data, clean data, actionable data, and a stronger story. So more often than not, I just feel like the output is better. The more we trust each other and the more we kind of have that open communication to solve kind of the business problem and take it to the next level, right? And we teach each other along the way. Like I have found in my career that there's a handful of agency partners, maybe when I was more junior many years ago, that were my best mentors. It wasn't even necessarily an internal mentor, at my company. Some of my best mentors were actually agency partners, because they taught me about the industry. They taught me like what does make great qualitative or great quantitative or a combination of both early in my career. And now I can do that with others as well. And I'm still learning, right? That's a nice part about the industry that we're in. You can, the way when you're studying human behavior, and the way the marketplace is changing, we're constantly learning. So you can still find those mentors no matter what stage in your career you're at. And, you know, when we've had those strong agency client relationships, we really celebrate. And, you know, oh, I wish I did this and I learned from my mistakes, or we could next time, if we have that topic again, maybe we could add this to the research, or that type of analysis maybe would have enhanced it a little bit more. But you learn from your mistakes and you celebrate together. And a lot of times I find that when I'm doing research, I'm at a point where it's almost like the agency doesn't matter as much anymore. Like, let's face it, there's many agencies that can do a concept test. There's many agencies that can do a product test. There's many agencies that can run similar analyses. Yes, there are certain things that make them stand apart, but a lot of times I'm thinking about the person that I'm going to work with. And that's just as important, if not more important, than the research agency. You know, recently I've said, okay, I can choose agency A, B, or C, but agencies B and C have an account team that's really great to work with. So like, I'll rule out agency A purely on that. Because I keep thinking, you know, I want to make sure that the work is going to be quality, and we're all under incredible time pressures these days. So I want to make sure that I can't take so many risks, right? So I've got to go with a good partner. I've got to go with someone who I know is going to do good research and tell the story at the end that I need, because I don't have the time to redo things. I don't have the time to redo an analysis, or just make sure that the research was done correctly. So I've got to have that trust up front. And sometimes that comes from the person, and not the agency. I don't know if others have felt that way as well, or if you have any thoughts or builds.
So I have a question.
Sure.
You know, there may be a preferred agency that you like to work with, but within that agency, are there individuals that you say, I will go to this agency, but I really need to work with this individual because that is their expertise and so forth, versus I don't, you know, you may not find all of the individuals as star players, right? So the
Right.
question is, how do you determine who those star players are, and what do you do when that star player is not available?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's not easy, right? Like, so sometimes it starts, I find it starts up front when I'm like meeting my account lead, right? Like, this is, I'll do orientations with people to say, and I'll just get a good gut sense too. Like, sometimes in the beginning, I'll be like, okay, this is my account lead at agency X. And I'm like, okay, let's just meet. I want to tell you about my business. I want to hear what you guys are doing. I'll give them the time up front to kind of learn about each other, right? Like, it's almost like you're interviewing. Like, and so you say, okay, does this person, and then I'll say, like, tell me about your team. How do you like to organize your team? How do you like to do X, Y, and Z? So then when I have a project, I kind of know, do I want to go with them or not? Now, I have before, if like I can't get someone in particular, I have like tried to negotiate, you know, can I throw money at a problem, or can I convince my internal stakeholders that we should wait for someone? That comes up in qualitative a lot, right? Like, you have your 2 or 3 favorite moderators. And when those 2 or 3 people are booked and your marketing team said, I'm trying to do this the week of August 15th, and your favorite two moderators are on vacation that week, I've said, like, no, you need to wait. Like, we need to work around their schedule. So sometimes it's just the influencing internally. Sometimes if it's a quant agency, I'd be like, I'd really like to do this study with so-and-so. Can we make it work? And then I've gotten things like, okay, Liz, I can't get them to work, but I know where you're going on this. So what they're going to do is another team's they're going to be at the beginning of your project, and they're going to be at the end of the project. I'm like, all right, I can live with that. I just want them to see it before it comes to me, or I want them to kick it off. And so it's a little bit of negotiations, and that's happened too. Did that answer your question, Scott? Or
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate this perspective.
yeah, I mean, it's not always easy. And sometimes you don't get it, and it's like, you get the B team, and you're like, all right, let's give the B team a try. And it was not my go-to person, but let's see how it goes. And you just have to kind of weigh if this is a high risk, extremely important project, then you fight for the A team, and you fight for doing it on, like, with the right people at the right time. If this is like an average project and it's not, then it's like, all right, let me give them a chance, and I'll carve in the extra time, and I'll try to figure out, like, just in case we have any hiccups along the way, I'm going to give myself a cushion. And, if the story comes back on a Monday, I'm not going to do the presentation until Thursday, because I need a couple days to make sure that things are going to be okay. Okay. The next part is also just about, what I wish agencies were all better at. And it's really funny because I wish agencies were better at, like, candidly, just telling a story, and giving their point of view in a few slides. I think I'm still surprised. I mean, it happens all the time, but, like, I'm still surprised how often it happens that we get data dumps. And I wish that they could just kind of give their point of view in, like, what are the few slides? Because I may need to present to a larger audience, but the higher level ups, they only need, like, I only need a few slides. So I kind of need to know, like, what are those killer slides? What are those go-to slides that, like, tell the story in just 3 or 4 pages? Because sometimes I need to drop something in, and this happens to, depending on the type of industry you're in. In my consumer packaged goods, I might be kind of presenting, or an agency might be presenting to a marketing audience, or an R&D audience, or even some internal salespeople. But then one day I might need 1 or 2 slides to go to Walmart, right? If I'm trying to explain, hey, Walmart, this is our new innovation in yogurt, and this is why this is important, and this is what we learned. I kind of need, like, that great key visual, or that great, like, this is kind of the insight, the 1 or 2, 3 insights that we learned from this great piece of work that you need to remember and land. And I wish that some of our agency partners were better at delivering that, or seeing that was the need. I often tell agencies, please, 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 if you're gonna, yes, we all live in PowerPoint, unfortunately. Sometimes I live in the world of PowerPoint at my companies that I worked at. So I need it to read like a children's storybook. Please, please, please don't tell me what the data says. Oh, 5% more said X. No, I don't need that. Or A is significantly higher than B. Okay, I can see that on the table. Tell me what the implication is. Tell me what's the so what. Tell me in a headline that so therefore you should be thinking about X, or therefore you should be thinking about what this means for your next step, your next chapter. Try to think a little bit about the future that we're living in right now. So if this is what we learn about the ad, then how do I need to fix it? Or if this is how consumers are reacting, then tell me, give me ideas on what we should be, what's the action that we should be taking. Please, please, please don't dump 50 pages of data tables. You know, I'm finding, you know, more and more, like if I only have an hour to present something, I need time for a conversation. I need time for, you know, questions, right? Because not everyone's gonna, they're gonna ask questions along the way. So, you know, I just kind of need the story to be told. It might have been a pretty complex study. And sometimes you need to like find the story. I get it. And sometimes you need to do a data dump to like, it sounds like even in your homework, you might have had to look at a bunch of different things if you were given a data set, but you might not have used it all in your presentation. You might not have used every single thing you came up with. It can stay in Excel, it can stay on a slide in the appendix, but like, what's the real story? So for me, that's kind of some key learnings that I've had that I wish agencies were kind of continue to improve. And it's hard. Storytelling's not easy, right? It's hard to do. And as you're doing it, you know, as you're deciding who you're going to work with, sometimes I think, all right, who, again, it comes down to a person sometimes, in addition to like the agency, is who's going to give me that deliverable in the time that I've got. You know, will I have to redo anything? You know, is agency X, I'm going to give them a try, but I've got to build in that time, because if I have to ask them to like, you know, get from draft 1 to draft 2 to draft 3 before I think it's good enough to share with my business partners, then I've got to build in that time, or hopefully, or time for myself. But going back to the agency partners, I once was in a situation where I said, is this what you kind of got from this agency? I went to a peer and they're like, yeah, I just redid it. And I'm like, oh, well, if we give them the feedback, hopefully they'll kind of understand what we're looking for next time. So it'll like pay off long term. So let's try to give them, and I tell some of my direct reports, let's try to give them the feedback. Or even if we, because of timing, we had to redo it ourselves, let's show them what we delivered to our marketing partners or our business partners, so that next time they'll give us kind of that and we'll get it right on the first time. Does that make sense? These are my kind of tips and tricks.
Any questions, guys? Like, do you guys, everybody interact with an external supplier or many external suppliers?
Yes, I was gonna say that
Experiences, fun,
that slide actually
frustrating?
resonates with me a lot.
I'm sorry, Justine, go ahead. I cut
I
you
was
off.
just gonna say that resonates with me a lot, what she was saying about, like, just put it on a few slides. Like, there's just a vendor we work with, and it's like, the decks are always like 30, 40 slides, and there's so much on every slide. And it's like, why? Like, I mean, there's no way anybody could look at this slide, even the people that are involved in it, and understand what they're trying to say. And it's like we're constantly giving feedback, and that doesn't always work. I feel like we end up like just redoing things ourselves all the time. And that was kind of one point I was going to ask, like, you know, with agencies, it's like sometimes you've invested so much in an agency that it's like and obviously there's contracts and things like that. It's like, it's hard to cut the ties. You know, some agencies require like multi-year contracts. like, have you run into that before? And like, how do you deal with that? I know that's probably a very extensive question, but like that, I think most people can probably relate to you in that sense.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm pretty honest and I'm trying to think long term. So I like to kind of give agencies a try, especially if it is a multi-year contract, right? Like you might have gotten a discount and or a great deal as a company, and you have to think of what's good for your company too. So, all right, let's invest in the partnership. And that's where I've sat down and I've said, all right, like this deliverable isn't going to work. Sometimes I do it right. Like they give me a PowerPoint with data and I'm like, all right, you tell me, I'm going to leave you a million notes in this PowerPoint. Like, what's the so what? Is this relevant? I don't think it's relevant. Put it in the appendix. Or, I've only get it down to 10 slides. What are the 10 slides? And I mean, it's bad to say, but if you feel like you've invested and you've gotten them, you may have to have the conversation like, we need a new team, or we need like can you highlight kind of if you're having problems with someone? Is it a case when it's horrible to say, like, can I just have, maybe it's a couple new people on the team? Can you give me an example of things that you've done for other clients that are non-compete? I have done that recently. Like, guys, I've tried this like 3 times and you haven't like given a good presentation. Can you just show me, like, this is a pretty set thing that you do for other clients. Can you just show me what you've done for, in my world, I could maybe ask for like, mask the data. You don't have to show me that it's Bank of America, but I live in the world of yogurt. So can you just make up numbers? Like, show me what you've done for another client. And maybe I can pick slides, or maybe I can say, oh, okay, that wouldn't work for me, or that does work for me. Sometimes I've done that. And then the worst case is severing ties. Like, I'm really sorry, but we're gonna have to take a break, right? And we're gonna do an RFP in 18 months. But we're gonna give someone else a try on this particular type of research. And then you have to be like, all right, am I up for that? Because, it's a whole new partnership, right? And it's starting from scratch. But I've found that if I roll up my sleeves, it's painful. Trust me, it's painful. But sometimes it's face to face. Sometimes it's like, yeah, we're just in it together. So let me teach you, right? If you have a vision, right, just teach them what you're thinking too.
Other questions?
Any other questions?
Comments?
Yeah, sorry.
Yes, sorry, Liz.
Relatable.
No? Anybody else?
Riley, I want to pick up on something you said earlier about like convincing people like not to do research. I've done that too, right? Like sometimes it's I joke sometimes that I've made a career of convincing people we shouldn't do research. If down and dirty isn't the way you want to go, then take secondary sources and pull it together yourself. And sometimes you can come up with lots of great insights and storytelling from data that exists too.
Any other thoughts from anyone? Questions? No? This was great, Liz. Thank you so, so much for spending the time with us.
No problem. Good luck on your projects, and hopefully our paths will cross in the research industry or with another ARF event.
Yeah. And I'll send out Liz's deck to everyone. So again, for Bank of America people, I'll send it via email because of your firewall. And for Jared and Jacqueline, I will post it on the Brightspace, the NYU Brightspace area, and it'll just be under announcements. So you'll get an email automatically because you're in Brightspace, so it'll be easy enough. Again, any other closing thoughts from anyone? Start thinking qualitative and quantitative, guys. 'Cause we'll be spending a lot of time on it. Okay, so there's no assignment due this week. Yay, right? This is the only week we don't have an assignment. So I would just, you could think about your final project, you can enjoy it, whatever works for you. And then after that, we will have an assignment every week up until doing the final project, which will be due at the end of our final week of class. So we'll have class on Tuesday, final project will be due Thursday night. And I was asked this, if I did not set the timing on this. We have to adhere to NYU policies for grading in terms of timelines, and all of the grades have to be in, I think that's August 5th on that Monday. So I need everybody's assignment by Thursday night, so I have a chance to read it, grade it, and get all the grades in. Make sense? Okay, and as always, you know how to find me. I've spoken to a bunch of you, and thank you again, Liz. So appreciated. Have a great rest of the week, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks. Okay.
Take care.
Bye.